Yo, 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 what's cracking, everybody? So today I'm coming in with a short little video where I'm just going to discuss how to make your chord progressions better inside of FL Studio. Or Ableton, Logic Pro, Pro Tools, whatever DAW you used, it's all basically the same thing, just I use FL Studio, so that's what I'm going to be showing it to you in. So right off the bat, we just got to cover the basics of what even is a chord. So if I just put down a note real quick, right there we got a D. It's nothing special, it's just one note. However, if I put two more notes on top of that, that makes up a chord. Those three notes together, that's a chord. So a chord is just a group of notes being played at the same time. So the framework for how you build chords are called scales. And where you find scales inside of FL Studio is you go up here to this little arrow when you're inside the piano roll, you go down to View, and then you head down to Scale Highlighting. And over here you'll see a bunch of different notes, and when you select a note right here, it's basically going to determine what the root note for your scale is. All that means is just that's home. That's like the home note of the scale. And then over here you just have a whole bunch of different ones. Realistically, I like experimenting with different scales, but if you pick a major scale, it's going to sound happy. If you pick a minor scale, it's going to sound more sad and dark. For this chord progression that I'm about to build, we're in D minor. So real quick, I'm just going to go in and write the chord progression. So right there, because I had the scale already selected using this little drop down menu over here, it made it super easy to write some chords because all the notes that sound good together inside the scale are highlighted. You'll see they're like a lighter color, while the notes that you shouldn't use are a darker color. Just by putting notes together that are one space apart inside the scale, you can build chords, and those are going to sound nice together. So I'm going to show you how this chord progression sounds real quick. This is a pretty simple chord progression, and realistically for most genres of music you can get away with a chord progression like this. As long as you have a lot of instruments and vocals and drums, it's going to sound like a complete song, but I like to switch up my chord progressions just to make things more interesting. One of the most common ways to switch up a chord progression is by adding the seventh into them. So right here you have the first note of the scale, you have the third note of the scale, and then you have the fifth note of the scale. If you just drop the seventh note, which will be two notes above the fifth, now you have a seventh chord, and I'm just going to put the seventh in for all of these real quick, and I'll show you how that sounds. So seventh chords have a pretty cool sound to them, and you can see right away it just makes the chord progression sound a little more interesting because there's more stuff going on. So now another quick and easy way to spice up your chord progressions are by using what are called inversions. And inversions are basically just where you take notes inside of a chord and move them up or down an octave. So let's say this first chord, I want to move this F up an octave. I would just hold Control and press the up arrow key. Boom, now it's up there. So real quick, I'm just going to mess around and I'm going to invert a bunch of these notes in these chords, and then we'll take a listen to how that sounds. So right away you can hear that the chords got very spaced apart. There's high-pitched notes and there's low-pitched notes, and it gives the chord a very wide and airy sort of sound. But for this particular chord progression, I don't really want that wide and airy sound. So I'm just gonna undo what I did real quick. Boom, there we go. So now we're back to what we started with, where it's just the basic chords and the sevenths. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add passing notes. So rather than just having the chords playing on their own, I'm going to move some of the notes over so it's more spaced out and the chord just kind of builds on itself throughout the bar. So right off the bat, the biggest move that I did is the seventh note in all the chords. I just moved them over to the middle of the bar. And then I also just took a couple of the other notes from the bass chords and just nudged them over a little bit. And this is how it sounds. So just with that change alone, even if I didn't have the sevenths in there, it just makes the chord progression sound a lot more busy and like there's a lot of stuff going on. So now let's say that I take what we have here and now I start inverting notes. It's going to make this chord progression sound completely different than how it sounded at the start. Just like that. Look at that. I just moved a whole bunch of notes around. I didn't really think too much about it. I just started moving octaves, and let's see what this sounds like. it's a completely different sound than what we started with. And just for reference, I'm gonna make another pattern real quick, and I'm gonna just compare the two so you can see the difference. Okay, so now I just remade the chord progression that we started with, and I'll show you what it sounds like to hear this, so that way you can compare it to what we ended up with after applying a whole bunch of inversions and seventh notes and passing notes and all the tips that I showed you throughout the video. Alright, so that finishes up my video on how to make better chord progressions inside of FL Studio. Hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you learned something new. Maybe these techniques will come in useful when you're trying to make your own music. Leave a like if you'd like, and I will catch you next time.